last lecture, we left off by setting up our backend sign up route, right? Over here, we had set up our sign up route. The only thing we did was we console logged into the terminal, this right here, and we used the client side and tested it out that everything worked out well. Okay, but now what I want to do is I want to start setting up some middleware. If you recall from some previous lectures, I had said that it's good practice to do validation on client side and server side. So that is what I did. I set up my client side validation already, but now that we're arriving to the backend server, we want to set up the validation now on the server. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a package called express-validator. That's going to allow us to do that server-side validation. So I'm going to open up another terminal screen here and do npm install express-validator. Okay, let me open my package.json on the back end and check that it's going to be placed within here. And as you can see right here, it's installed. All right, so I'm going to close up that terminal here, close up this. All right, so we installed express-validator. All right, next, signup validator middleware. Okay, so here in between this route here and this right here, which I'm actually going to delete this for now because this was for testing, because I am going to have my signup controller in its separate file. So I'm going to remove that for now. But in my next arguments right here, right after the sign up, I'm going to set up some middleware to do our validation. But before we do that, I'm going to open up the express-validator documentation so we can take a look at that. All right, under getting started, here it gives us some examples. So in the documentation, it shows us that we have the endpoint route, which is user, and that there's some middleware here. In between these brackets here, it's doing some checks on username and password, and that's coming from the front end. And then in this next callback function, it's checking the result of these checks here. Okay, if there's any errors, and if there were any errors, it returns an error. But what I'm going to do is I want to do things a little differently, in which I want to separate my middleware. So instead of having all this bundled up together, this middleware and this checks inside the routes, I want to separate them into two separate middlewares. One for doing the checks like this, and then the other one that's going to take the results or check the results of it. Okay, so this way there's less decluttering inside the route. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do exactly right here. So here I am going to call this middleware, I'm going to call it signup validator. Okay, and I'm going to create that, and I'm going to create let's see, inside the main root directory, I'm going to create a folder called middlewares or middleware, just middleware. Oh no, what am I? Okay, make their middleware. Okay, we have a folder called middleware, and inside here I'm going to create a file called validator.js. This is where all of our validation is going to exist. I'm going to close up this terminal here. All right, so here I call this I called it signup validator. So I'm going to do export const. No, I'm sorry. Exports, and then signup validator. And just like any middleware, you have to have request, response, and then next to tell it to continue on. Okay, so here I have to import it within my signup route here in order to use it. I'm gonna do const and require, and we need to go back one directory, go into middleware, and then validator. And then from there, we're going to pull out what was called, it was called signup validator. Okay. Okay, so we pulled out signup validator. Okay, so we have the middleware. Now let's start creating this validator. All right, so let's go back to the documentation here. And we have to require this package here in order to use it, right? I'm gonna just copy this right here. Paste it right in here. The only thing I'm gonna need from the express validator, at least for now, in this file is just the check. This file is just gonna do the checking of the input coming from the client. Okay. So here what I'm going to do is let's look again at the documentation. This is going to help us a lot. Just looking at here as an example, let's go sanitation. Let's see. Okay, right here. Okay. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. This is actually, no, I don't. Let me delete that again. I don't need that. Okay, this is actually going to be an array, and we are start making our checks here. So here I'm going to do check, and then within here, what am I checking? I'm checking the input. Here I'm going to place the input or the values of what I'm getting back from the client. So what am I doing a check on? I'm doing a check on this data coming in from here. So I'm checking if I'm getting an incoming. These are the incoming data that I'm getting from client. So I'm going to do a check on username, email, and password. Okay. So let's do our first check on the username. And then I want to, let's go here. Let's do sanitation. Okay, I'm going to check it that it's not empty. Let me do all this here. I'm going to copy all this here. Paste that right in here just like this. Oh. Okay. I'm going to do a check that it's not empty. That it's not is empty. And I'm going to do a trim. And then I'm going to do a with message. If the username, if it's empty, I'm going to do a message, all fields required, comma, and then now our other check, and we're checking for, it was the email. Okay, and we're doing checking is email, and then let's go here back to documentation, email right here, normalize email, and then if it's invalid, we're going to send a message, invalid email. Now remember, this might seem repetitive because we did do the validation on the front end, but again, client side and backend and server side validation is good practice. So we have to do it, or it's best to do it. And then finally, we're doing the check on the password, right? All right, and for the password, let's go here back to the documentation. Let's see here. I know there's an example here. Okay, this one right here. I want to check the length. Okay, I want to check the length. Is length, and then the min of 6. That the password has to be at least six characters long. Okay. And if it's not, we're going to send back a message with message. Password must be at least 6 characters long. Okay. All right. So we got our checks for all the arriving data from the client side: username, email, and password. Okay. So, and inside our route, we had added it right here. So now it's being placed inside our route as middleware. So if we go here, sign up validator middleware. Okay. We took care of that. Now we have to take care of the result middleware. Okay. So now, as in our documentation, you see here is checking the result of our middleware. So let's go ahead here back into our route, and I'm going to call this middleware validator result. Okay. I'm also going to have that. It's also going to be inside our validator middleware for validator. So I can just pull it out from here. Validator result. Let's go create that here. Exports validator result. This will take in request response and then next. Okay, let me call out next here so we don't forget. All right, let's go back to our documentation here. Validation result here. If we look in documentation and then under validation result, now we have to pull out we have to pull validation result from the express-validator. So here, remember we just pull out check previously, but now we're going to take that out. So now we can use it here. Let's go back to documentation here. Okay. All right. Let me see. Okay. So I'm going to do exactly this right here, validation result, and we have to pass in the request object. Okay, const, and I'm going to variable result. I'm going to do validation result, and then pass in the request right here. Is that what it was? Yeah. Validation result, yes, pass in the result. Okay, good. All right, and then now I'm going to do an if statement, a conditional check. And I'm going to check if, let me see here. Okay, no, actually, let me do this here. Has errors, not result is empty. Okay, let me create another variable here. Const has errors. So if not result is empty, is not result is empty. Okay, so if not result is empty, so in other words, this is checking if there is any errors, is gonna be passed here that it does have errors, and that's where we're gonna pass it into our condition here. So if has errors, if there are any errors, we are gonna execute this block of code here, and we're gonna do return response status of 400 for bad request, and we're going to send back a JSON. But before here, I want to set up a variable called errors. Wait, first error, and I'm going to actually let me console log this first. If has errors result. Okay, I'm gonna first console log here two things. Has errors, and then has errors, and then the second one I'm gonna console log result. So let's see what we get here. Okay, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually on purpose fail this validation here for the password. I'm going to make sure that this fails. So here saying that we have to meet that we must have a minimum of 6 characters. Instead, I'm going to put 3 characters. So let's go back to our client right in here. Okay. And I'm going to, let me remove all this here. I'm going to just do ABC and ABC. So it's just 3 characters. So I should get an error on the server side console. Okay. Okay. Here, remember, has errors, and then it's true because it's true there were errors, and then this is the result object that we get back. And then here you can see we have a property called arrays, and that's an array of object. It's an array, and we have some values here, and this is what I want here. I want this property here, message password must be at least 6 character longs. And this is coming from what we set up over here. And that's what I want to get back. So let's do that here. Let's do const first error. And I'm going to do the result. And then we have errors. No, result errors. Result array. Yeah, result array. A second here. Yes. All right, good. All right, yeah, so result array. Okay, so we can get that array here that's inside here by using this right here, result array. And then what I want to get is I want to get back the first object inside that array, and then pull out the message right here, property, just like so. Okay, and that's going to be stored inside first error. Okay, so now what I want to do is let me comment this out. I want to return response status code of 400, a bad request, and then JSON. It's gonna be an object. I'm gonna do error message, and then I'm gonna pass in first error, just like this. Okay, so now we are sending back this right here back to the client, and I'm gonna do a check. I'm gonna test this out. I'm gonna open up my network tab, And again, only 3 characters long, so I should get that error back. I'm gonna press sign up. Okay, here, sign up, and look what we get back. This is exactly what we sent back from the server, right? The error message with password must be at least 6 characters long. Perfect, awesome. Now that we have this message, this error coming back from the server side, we have to make use of it over here because it's not displaying anything right now. I mean, everything else is displaying, right? See, if I make a mistake here, remove the dot from the email, I should get the, and I press sign up, I'm getting invalid email, but that's because that's the error that's being submitted from the client side, the validation there. Okay, but this is coming from, this is the message that's coming from the backend. Okay, so let me correct that here. Okay, all right, so let's do something. Let's get this error message that's arriving from the server as a response and bring that into the client. So I'm going to go back to my client side, sign up to our sign up component. And over here, remember, this is our sign up method that's making the HTTP request here. So if there's an error that's coming from the backend, it's being stored here in the response and returning that response here, which returns back to where it was called here in our sign up component. And here's a response. We're pulling it out here. And that's this runs again if everything succeeds. However, in the back end, we're getting an error. So this will not execute. Instead, this catch block will execute. And you see here in our set form data, we have not set anything here as far as setting up our error message. Okay, and that's where we're going to bring in our error message from the back end. So we're going to do error message, right? And then the value we're going to give it is, we're getting this error object right here, right, from the catch block. Do error and then response data, and then the data, and then the what we call the error message from the backend right here, right here, which was error message. So it has to be the same name. So error message, just like this.